Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to focus on Horizon and solo queuing. I feel like there's going to be a lot to teach and a lot to learn here, and you're going to see some amazing plays, amazing shots, and some not so amazing plays, and sometimes you're going to run into RNG, and I think there's just going to be a lot that we can educate and teach and see some amazing shots like that. And even though you have things go your way and you've got a really strong third party, I always feel like there's so much to learn from so many of these scenarios, and it's why I've been making this video series and been putting so much effort into it. I definitely tried a lot more with Horizon, and definitely enjoy Horizon and Watson a lot more because those are both, I guess I've really discovered those are both my mains. So even though you have, and we'll just get into it, we'll talk about this clip and then I'm gonna timestamp everything for you guys. Also have a sponsor segment later on. This is gonna be a longer video, so I apologize that it's a longer video, but I promise you that there's always something to gain out of this. So that positioning and the wingman, and you're gonna see me use that a lot with today. And even though you got a really good jump, you'll notice right off the rip that sometimes things just don't always go your way, which is interesting because I had the jump on this team. What I find very interesting about things that happen in terms of third parties is that if you are the one dishing out the most amount of damage, teams always have a sense knowing that you are the one putting the large amount of pressure, and everyone starts to focus you. If you're not putting a lot of pressure, I feel like teams tend to ignore your presence, or if you kind of wait and play a little bit more patiently and passively, because it's putting so much pressure and puts me as the largest target here. So let's go into the clip. First, I'm going to go into Diamond, and I necessarily didn't play solo, but I did have a solo moment where I isolated a team. Then we're going to get into some amazing solo, because at one point people were saying in the comments, we'll just do this in ranked. It's like, you can, for the most part. In terms of like actually dropping solo, you can't, because you know you have to worry about no fills. But I mean, like in terms of isolating teams, the concept is always the same, and I want you guys to understand that, and that's why it's so educational, this type of video content. So let's segue to that ranked piece. So this is the Diamond ranked piece that I wanted to highlight. I was playing on an alternate account, and I'm going to talk about my theory on MMR as well as some tips, especially of why it seems like you're always getting to high tier lobbies. So I want to talk about that, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Sometimes this happens, and this isn't the clean 1v3 immediately, but sometimes you'll run into a scenario where you just need to back up and you run into an unfortunate situation. So I made the mistake here of running into the Ash Tactical, but luckily it didn't punish me too hard because I was able to wide swing and still make a play out of this scenario. I decided to go in and go for the cleanup. I know my teammate was commenting that there was another team here, but I decided to go for the armor swap and then just get out of dodge. So we decided initially to actually push this team, but the downside of what actually occurred here is the third party we thought we were engaging is that you always have to prep and understand that a team is always going to duck and weave out because they don't want to be part of a third party. So luckily, I managed to get away and take height. I'm using the meme charge rifle because it is a great way to create some entry damage. So it's definitely cheesing a bit. But it's one of those things that, yes, some loadouts can definitely be cheesy, but they can definitely get the job done. So there was quite a bit of damage here. So what I'm doing initially here is isolating and trying to make sure I get the teams out of position. And for some reason, my goal really is just to get them to leave, and I was hoping by putting enough damage that they would leave. But when this is a mistake that I see even in higher tier lobbies and even in pubs, is that because it's a solo, they start to play a little overconfident and they make a lot of mistakes. So don't be this type of team. Treat, even if it's a solo, as if it was a full squad, because honestly, playing Horizon solo so much, I always felt like the biggest mistake that everybody was doing was pushing me individually, and it happened a lot. And the beauty of playing Horizon or Legend that can get out, as you can see, is the ability to isolate because you were able to get away and take height and also reposition. Your positioning is always going to be key and very, very important. And even then, don't give up and don't fret and keep an eye. So the Rampart is definitely playing far from her team, even though the Bloodhound definitely pushed forward. So this is a very clear moment. Do not window shop. Take what you need. So I grabbed what I needed. I could have grabbed a little bit more. But the biggest thing of how I won this 1v3 was being very quick and efficient and making sure, you see how I also play the head glitch here while the Rampart is just playing right out in the open. Could have been eliminated there if I landed that charge rifle shot, but I decided to continue to play this patiently. You don't see me just run out in the open making the same mistake that the Rampart is. But honestly, what's crazy about this team is that this is a plat diamond lobby from what we ran into from the enemy team, from what you can see. And unfortunately, it just plays out the way it plays out, you know? Sometimes you run into harder opponents, sometimes you don't. Just always treat as if every opponent is going to be a difficult one, even if they play like absolute, I guess lack for a better word, and I apologize if it's a mean word, like bots. So play it as if you were always going to play a really skilled team and lobby. Best advice I can provide, and they're always going to make mistakes, and it's going to happen in diamond lobbies, non-diamond lobbies. You're going to run into bots, you're going to run into preds, and I don't understand the MMR system sometimes, and so let's talk about the MMR real quick. This is my theory on it, and it could be right and it could be wrong, but let's talk about my theory behind the MMR before we go further into the video, because I think it's very important. Because sometimes I actually feel like pubs can be much more difficult than ranked, because in ranked, let's say you're playing gold and you're going to play against gold players. But then my theory is if you reverse engineer the thought process, like, okay, well, your rank also takes into account your lobby, the amount of damage and eliminations you had the last round, how did you perform your last game, how many hours do you have, and what is your overall level that you have. So it's not the perfect, but if you try to think of like what would be important in terms of what would be valuable in terms of your rank to matchmaking you, I feel like that's what it would be. And sometimes in ranked, you'll get placed against lower tier players for some reason. It just does not make a whole lot of sense a lot of time. But at least you can try to pound some logic into it, because what you're going to see later on in the footage is that sometimes I actually ran into players that were like with 27,000 eliminations. And that I'm definitely going to showcase that footage where it's like, well, this is much more difficult than ranked. So don't get discouraged if you play ranked or pubs if you find one is more difficult than the other. Time of day is also important whenever you're queuing up. Your teammates can also be impactful. There's different parts of the equation that really add up in terms of the type of lobby that you're going to get. That's my little theory. I'll timestamp my little discussion here, just my thought process, because it really doesn't matter what account you play at the end of the day, because if you played really well in that account, I rest assured you're going to be facing off against much more difficult lobbies. So let's go into the next clip when we start playing against these players and opponents. So this is a solo queue on Kings Canyon. For the most part, I didn't, you got to keep in mind when I'm making a lot of these videos that because I'm juggling work and everything, I don't always get the most amount of time to play. So while it seems like I'm getting a lot of rounds in, the reality is I'm also really not, because if I'm doing Loba solo queue and you saw me do Watson, then you see me live stream, the amount of time that I really get to myself, and also yesterday was actually my wife's birthday, that you know that the amount of time that you get to play can sometimes be a little limited. It's why I didn't go too crazy trying to search for a win. At some point I was playing and I was like, you know, these lobbies are fine. So the reason I dropped here is I saw there was a lot of teams located on the other side of the map, close by. And I tend to drop hot because I don't want to be devoid of not being in the encounter. You'll notice my ideal loadout, my more favorite one, is definitely like a 30-30 R301 or Wingman or R301. Your R301 for doing nice consistent damage. They're both great for medium to short range to long range, because you can land some shots long range with the Wingman and do some real work. So you'll notice that I'm being very quick and efficient in terms of my loot here at the very start. That is definitely done on purpose, because I want to make sure I can get to the action, but I have enough loot at my disposal that whenever I actually do push, that I have enough here. So I see the shots located a little further up, and I'm going to make a play here in just a moment and just push in. So let's skip to that, because once I run through here and I notice they looted it, I have the loadout to win a fight. So what I do is I wait for this person to drop, because I'm most likely it's pubs, so I wait for them to do so, and I manage to catch another one out of position here. This isn't always the smartest play, but I do decide to actually push this just because I want to knock them out, and I hear them fighting up above. So if they're busy up above, I know that I'll be able to isolate this fight and catch them out. So we'll go and re-knock, and I saw it was a lifeline, so I know that they were going to get that res on that. And I didn't want to have to deal with this team later, especially since I've already done quite a bit of work to making sure that I got some knocks and eliminations. So this is 2 out. I go for the armor swap. I don't dilly-dally here in the box, and I run. You don't want to spend too much time. There might be things that you miss, but keep in mind if you window shop and I sit there for far too long. I heard the team up above was still fighting, and I see people are getting eliminated in the kill feed. This was very, very hot. You saw the amount of teams that dropped here and how fast this actually went. So it's very, very important that you take a moment and realize that you do need to move, and it's important that you move. And you're going to make mistakes, and it's okay. The gameplay that you're going to see for most part today is not perfect. It's I would call it pretty average. I'm pretty critical of my own gameplay to begin with. I even think whenever I live stream, I just am not as like in tune or focused. And it can be very, very difficult, especially when you're talking and it's almost better if you stay silent and calm only the important things. So sometimes why I decide to do comms after the fact, because I'm much more in the moment here and a lot more focused. And so I'm not making a whole lot of mistakes in terms of my gameplay. I'm also sometimes listening to music, which is why I'm muting the gameplay in the background. Music can also help you kind of get into the moment, get zen, because 1v3s can be very stressful. So sometimes playing music can be very calming and relaxing. So right here, I catch out this team and I'm just kind of finding positioning, but I'm also, if you notice my hitbox, I'm ducking and weaving consistently. A mistake you see this Fuse make right here is that the hitbox is really, really large. And the reason why I go for finishes constantly in solos is because I don't want to have to deal with the res. If an opponent happens to res, it's like the worst thing that could possibly happen, because now you have to push. So if you can get them out and kind of grief, you'll be in a better spot for it. So I decide not to push on this, and I decide to reset rather than going in the fight. And the reason I decide to do that is I know that the mistake it's going to make by pushing in and just being right in the middle of 3 opponents. So right now I'm just trying to make a play. I'm trying to play a little patiently. Decided to arc star, and maybe I should have just taken the shot initially, but I was hoping that they would have stayed. Unfortunately, it didn't, but the plus side is that I managed to get one isolated out here. I honestly could have been a little bit more behind cover beforehand. Otherwise, if they landed more of their shots, I could have whiffed pretty bad. But luckily, I managed to get another wingman shot. I go for the armor swap here. Make sure I clean up pretty quick just in case I get thirded. I'm cleaning up quickly just to make sure I don't get shot. I needed to armor swap a little faster. I needed to heal up a little faster, because if somebody was above, I could have gotten eliminated, and that would have been pretty bad. But this is 6 eliminations so far. Pretty solid, catching teams out and just being in the thick of it. I do get pushed here, and I immediately queue up. A big tip, especially when you're playing Horizon, is that your queue is your way to reset and get out of a bad situation. Remember how I mentioned don't dilly-dally in a box, and just because somebody runs away, don't make the mistake of being in the box. And so I catch that Wraith out of position just because they were in the box. So don't do that. That's definitely a big no-no. And I make that mistake too. If you go through my live stream, like I look at my gameplay when I was playing Bangalore, it's atrocious. I always feel embarrassed when I look at my gameplay, but I'm trying to put myself out there so then you can learn stuff as well. Because when you look back at your VODs and you're trying to think of things and how to critique, you have to think of the little moments where you either took too much damage or you could have dished out a little bit more, and try to think of alternatives like path 1, 2, and 3. So this is the top 7, and what happens when I solo queue is that once I notice that the action and the chaos is already done, I decide to slow my game down, because I know that the last teams are all going to have better armors. Usually they're going to be at purples and reds. And positioning-wise, it's going to be much more difficult to catch them out. So let's see the mistake I make, because unfortunately this is not a dub of a round. I don't win this round, unfortunately. So we're going to skip ahead to where, oh yeah, I do remember this, where I ran into a Wraith, unfortunately, here, and luckily she was a solo. So I do know that there is a team potentially nearby. So I was kind of already self-aware. I did quite a bit of damage, but this Wraith is also extremely sweaty. So I capitalized on that, but I also want to assess the situation. I don't know if the Wraith was right by a teammate. All I know is that there's one. So I'm not necessarily backing down from the situation completely. I'm just trying to make sure, and that's why I'm looking to make sure I'm not going to get eliminated from another spot. And I assume that the Wraith is going to queue, which I think she did, and I was so confused. I'm like, did she really back out that quickly? And I do find her right down below here in just a moment. This turns into a really long, extended fight, and I'm constantly trying to find the right opportunity to go in. The problem is, when going in with somebody with gold armor, is that they have really high reset potential. So you have to keep those things in mind, and you don't necessarily want to back out of the encounter, which is why I'm still trying to put so much pressure. Pressure is a great way to catch an opponent out, and you'll notice that what's crazy is that the 80-80 spam was harder for me to hit, but once she started moving in a straight line, much easier to hit. If you notice somebody's 80-80 spamming, another tip is just kind of wait a little more patiently to land your shot. So I'm putting an immense amount of pressure, so you'll notice I'm always keeping an eye where I believe teams are at. So I'm going to cut left and look, and you're going to notice right away as I keep moving in that I'm also keeping very self-aware of like, because I'm making a lot of noise. And so I'm making a lot of noise, and while I'm wide swinging on this, I'm also looking around consistently as I'm moving around. So you're going to see me double back here. I already see in the top left of my eye, I'm like, oh, there's a team. So I decide to full send this opponent because I'm about to get shot at here. This is how you have to be very self-aware of third parties. It's not playing, I guess you can say, lack for a better word, weak. It's playing smart and intelligently. Because you know that if you're making a lot of noise that you're going to get thirded, but you notice that I stay within this fight as much as possible to keep the pressure up. So even if the team on the left side decides to push in, I'm being very self-aware of them. I'm also keeping very conscious effort of my resources. I do have quite a bit of syringes, so I feel like I can stay within this fight confidently for an extended period of time. That time is going to be shortened the longer that I stay here, but once you realize that your resources are cut short and you can't stay within the fight, you just need to book it and run. And it's okay to make that decision, but make a very hard, distinct decision when you're going to do it. I feel like the biggest mistake most people make is that they won't make a hard decision. They'll kind of like stay in flux or stay in between. And you kind of saw that on stream yesterday when we're spectating teammates and looking at peeps as well, is that decision making isn't very distinct. And it's okay to make a very clear, distinct decision to say, I'm staying within this, and it be wrong and it not be right, because at least you're committing onto one thing or the other. So I'm making the hard decision to kind of commit on this. And the reason why is I really also want the goal to kind of heal up. And I want my resources. I know, but if I take the long... Oh, I kind of bumped my thing there, and I apologize for that. And my glitch energy is actually right next to me, and I've been drinking it most of today. So shameless plug. If I cut all the way to the right, I know that I don't have the resources to do that. I need to cut directly through, but I need to get this Wraith out of the way so she's not pestering me. What interestingly happens here is I actually do get run up on, but this is where you use your utility to get out. I try to do a little damage. If I managed to get a better spray, I might have actually made a play. But because my damage was low, I make the very big decision to start moving, and I do not look back and I do not double back. You either need to stay in the fight or you need to run. Those hard decisions, especially when you're with a team and with a crew, are going to help you immensely in making better decision making, because you got to make mistakes. The more mistakes you make, the better player you're going to become. I sometimes wish, and I guarantee a lot of you watching, that you had more time to continue to make mistakes. And that's one thing, if I had more time in my day to juggle all of this stuff, is I would like to play more and make more mistakes, if anything. So don't feel bad if you lose in a fight or an encounter. It's not a bad thing. Just kind of go with it and know that you're learning. And if you're learning, that's better than not. So the interesting part that happens here is when I rotate in. So the fight, I do hear that they fought, and I see the Pathfinder going ahead. So I was making a hard decision to anchor because I thought they were going to run in, and I healed up and I had a Phoenix kit. So I made the decision just to anchor. And this Pathfinder, for some reason, forgot that I existed. And because they forgot I existed, it pretty much left them wide open for me to finish up this fight. They just used their grapple, so I know they don't have it. So I know that a Pathfinder or Horizon, any mobile legend that has used their utility, has no choice but to stay. I thought that they were going to grab the gold armor, but unfortunately they did not. I have way too many cells, by the way, looking at my inventory. I tend to overstack on the cells, but I'm also not going to dilly-dally and do resource management when I only have 2 syringes left to my name. This is another tip in terms of bunny hopping and using Horizon and making maximum use of your mobility, is when you're queued up into the air, use that to push yourself forward right away so you save on time. And I can't tell you how many times that'll save me some time as I push in, because my HP would actually be lower if I didn't. But use geometry, try to bunny hop and heal as much as possible as you're moving. And you have that ability more so as a Horizon. So let's take a look when I make a mistake, because at this point we're going to skip ahead because there's nothing that I do. I'm essentially waiting for a team to make a mistake, and I'm just rotating in, and I just end up chilling here waiting for a fight. I make a mistake here. Honestly, I think I engage a little bit too early, whenever I should have probably just rotated into zone. I'm kind of at the edge here, and I do a lot of damage, yes. But I have all the other teams looking at me, which is kind of the unfortunate part here. I really should have slowed it down just a little bit, instead of having this team down below and the team on the right that's using a charge rifle. Also, I think actually this round we get second place. Because I'm here in the back and I'm hard committed, the zone is pulling to the right. I decided just to pretty much grief this team because a team that has, I just don't want them to res. I don't want this. I can tell this charge rifle team is pretty much anchored and that they're not going to grief. So I decided to be the person who's going to grief in this scenario. But for some reason, the team up above. And so I know that my odds, it's a 1v1 versus potentially 3. And I decided to pretty much just slow heal this up. So I'm going to rotate in just a moment, because I need to get to zone. But I'm just waiting just to heal up initially, and then I decided to rotate. And of course, I'm being picked on by the charge rifle, and honestly, if they landed more of their shots, I probably would have been fully eliminated. I do hear footsteps oddly behind me, and I couldn't tell if it was a Valkyrie decided to cut towards my ankle. But the plus side of playing Horizon is I can play this low ground. If you play this low ground right here, there's no way to get up if you are a non-mobile legend like Horizon or let's say Valkyrie. So it's important to know your angles and your positioning. So what I decided to do is I take the long way to cut around, and they do go for the elimination, and I do see a res go out. The downside here is I wish that I had actually pushed much sooner or actually taken height to get more involved. This was actually pretty close to a win. And there's a few mistakes that I make in terms of movement. When you're 1v3ing, it's very important to make sure that you don't make a mistake. So this person is isolated right here, and I pretty much full commit. I do 133 damage, but she goes into her Q, and I whiff probably one extra shot than I should have. And I decided to drop down to pretty much grief. There's two things I could have done here better. I may not have needed to actually grief here because I was going to go for the armor swap, but then I decided not to. So instead, the thought process here, and there's another mistake I made here. I didn't go all the way up, so I kind of screwed up, but it kind of played to my advantage because this person actually drops down. For some reason, I don't know why they do that. And I also miss my ultimate here. My ultimate when I throw, even though the line was there, because I still had it on my hand and I was still moving, I throw it off the edge, and it's really embarrassing. And I do a lot of damage here, and if I landed that wingman shot, I could have started shooting the Bloodhound, so I whiffed there, unfortunately, and I decided to reload because I didn't feel confident with my wingman shot, and I kind of threw my own game. So very small mistakes in terms of like thought process here at the very end, but it's those small mistakes that do make a difference. So what I should have done, because she was low ground at this point, don't go for the grief. I just didn't think that they were going to drop on me, and because I knew that this spot was kind of tight, and if they didn't have a Horizon, I honestly probably would have won this encounter here. But because they had a Horizon, they're able to get back up into the fight, because there really is no way to get up at that spot, and I would have had dominance in terms of positioning there. And then the ultimate, even if they had a Horizon, might have actually locked him in for an extra second. So just a little bit unfortunate, just kind of how that played out. But let's get into the next game, and we're going to talk about another one where we got a lot of kills, but pretty close to clutching it out. Just a few mistakes at the end, pretty solid damage. Hey everyone, so this is a quick intermission, quick sponsored advert. If you want to know how to support the channel more, use code DAZ at checkout with Glitch Energy. Honestly, putting out a lot of content, you guys, most people don't actually know, but I actually work a full-time job with Soar Gaming. I juggle consulting as well as doing YouTube content. So Glitch Energy has been fantastic, especially with these longer videos that you're seeing here. It really helps with me keeping my energy levels up. So with ALGS going on right now, this flavor is actually inspired by Imperial How, but what's actually in here is actually the cotton candy flavor. I was drinking this one live on stream yesterday, but honestly, a lot of what Glitch does, and you guys know in terms of the channel, that I don't really take on a lot of sponsorships unless I really enjoy a product, and this is one that I really enjoy. So just another way to support. Don't worry, we'll get back to the video. I'm going to timestamp this, but for those that really truly support the channel and everything I do, just know that this means the absolute world. And it's just another way to give back to the channel and also get something in your hands, such as a product like Glitch. All right, let's get back into it. All right, this is the next solo queue game. These were done, some of these were done between different weekends. I was playing late last night after stream, believe it or not. It was pretty late whenever my wife actually went to bed. And so one of them was done on likely Swordaz, and the other one was done on maybe Swordaz. And I don't really remember the reason why I was doing it. I think it was just at the time whenever I was playing either ranked. They're both pretty high level accounts. They're ranked up to diamond right now. My main account is masters. So I drop hot here, and I don't hesitate to kind of go for the push because I see this person's isolated. So I decide to isolate that person out and go for the fight. And I wide swing once I know I have the damage done, and I kind of whiff a few of the shots, which is pretty unfortunate. But I managed to actually still clutch out. You wide swing once you know that you've done the damage. Once you've done the damage, it should be your encounter, especially if you have the health advantage. So I know I leave the blue armor behind, but because I know there's so much action, I try not to waste too much time worrying about armor when I know I can get it from opponents. I also don't want to waste my battery, because I only have one battery. So I managed to, keep in mind, if I spent the extra time looting there, I would have missed this opportunity to get for that. So when we talk about seconds mattering, seconds really matter in terms of being able to catch out a team. And it may not seem like it in the moment, but showing up even 3 seconds later to that encounter could have costed me quite a bit. I also like playing Horizon quite a bit solo queue, just because she's a great counter to Valkyrie. If I was Loba or Watson, Valkyrie can be very, very, very difficult to catch out. Mostly because of her jetpacks are very hard to catch her out of position. So I do hear the res here, and I do decide to wide swing it. This unfortunately is not the Valkyrie, and I almost whiffed and almost got eliminated, but I went for the push. You notice that the opponents that I'm mostly facing are also all stacked. You notice that they have the same clan names, so a lot of super sweat lobbies. And when I'm looking, I definitely saw quite a few master trails. I don't always understand why I get the most difficult lobbies. I wish that I got easier lobbies, and I talk about it on stream, but I just kind of truck through it and power through anyways. I sometimes feel like I luck out by getting some bots, but you know, when I say bots, it just kind of varies. And we talked about it earlier in the video, talking about MMR and everything, and the thought process is that I don't really have... I'm not consistently just dropping and just getting straight off eliminated. I might have had that happen. I tried this 14 times on 2 different weekends. And I would say me getting eliminated off drop probably happened around 3 or 4 times. Just because I kind of played it a little safer. But nonetheless, we're going to skip ahead here. My resources are really low. But I do hear another fight. So I got 4 eliminations, 641 damage. And I do see a team up above. And I'm going to decide to push that here in a second. And I'm just wall bouncing for the sake of it. There's not really any rhyme or reason. I just like to wall bounce quite a bit. So I push up. But as I'm doing so, I'm also looking for resources as I decide to cut the angle in. So I do manage to get a little shotgun ammo. That's why you see my shotgun ammo go up a little bit. And I'm also checking out these boxes because I definitely need light ammo. I have a mag and a half, but it doesn't stop me from getting involved in this encounter. Because I know I'm confident in my loadout that I should be able to get an elimination, which I do right there. And you see that happen. You should always be confident in your loadout that you should be able to at least get 1 elimination if you have at least 2 mags worth of ammo. So I could have gone for the wingman there, but I'm also praying that there's light ammo here, and I do get a little bit there, and I do try not to dilly-dally and spend too much time and waste resources here. So I decide to hold because I don't know the situation. I do know that a lot of people got eliminated, but I do see that there's still 2 teams remaining. It was possible that there was 3 teams located here. A little hard to tell, but when you don't have the information, you just kind of hold and wait until you can make an informed decision. I always say kind of like Sherlock Holmes' situation. I always feel like I play better, especially when I'm calming less, which is why in the commentary you hear me talking a lot more, which is why I'm deciding to do the commentary after the fact. And sometimes, actually, my roommate is actually streaming. He's actually a big up-and-coming YouTuber who's been popping off. His name is Josh Feed. So he's actually streaming during this time when I'm playing in the evenings. So it can be very hard for me to time being able to do commentary. So it's one of those things where scheduling can be a bit of a difficult issue. So I see that they're getting resources, so I go back in the boxes looking for more light ammo. So I decided to go back on this and look for more. I actually really much prefer the 2x4, and that's why you see me drop the 2x. There's things in my inventory. If you were to go in the test range, another big tip and advice I can provide, grab your dream loadout. Grab your dream backpack of what you would have, so then when you're in game, you know how to emulate it and make sure that you have it when you're in game. At this point, because I know there was 3 teams potentially fighting on the left and this person's third partying, I know there's probably at least 3 or 4 teams within this general vicinity. I decide to back up. And I decide to wrap on the south side of this because what's happening here, as you can tell, I know I can catch some teams out of position. And it's not because they're bad and you can see that they're really pushing, they're landing their grapples, is that I'm just catching them out. And you see this happen all the time whenever, let's say, you were to be caught out as that you're trying to assess, and for some reason they decide to wrap on me, and so I have no choice but to really drop because I'm literally going to get shoved into the other team. So a lot is really happening here, unfortunately, and I'm a little lacking on resources, and so I try to take this as patiently as possible, but sometimes you're kind of forced into the 1v1, and so I decide to go for this Watson push, And what I could have done here is actually probably gone for the swap, but I decided to go for the battery instead. It does get me kill leader. I could queue up and go in on this fight, but I try to see if there's any extra light ammo and resources that I potentially need. So I do have 8 eliminations at this point, but the downside here is that I do still end up ultimately losing. So let's see what happens and what mistake I make, and let's see if we can break down what I could have done better in the scenario. So let's go and skip ahead. I do manage to get a Volt, and I do decide to stay involved in this because the zone is really large and there's only 4 teams remaining, so there's no reason for me necessarily to run away. So I decide just to stay engaged up top here. But I think that does end up costing me, so let's kind of skip ahead and when that actually happens. So we go, it ends up turning into a big rotation. Every team decided to kind of leave, and so I decided to leave, and I'm trying to find the right opportunity to see if a team will actually engage with one another. When you run into this unfortunate circumstance where it's full teams and you're by yourself, most teams will start to isolate the rat and decide to push you out. So every team decided to rotate, and I think I just pretty much get chased at this point because they know I'm a rat. And the only thing I can do is try to get a really nice spray and then push back, or hoping that another team is going to save me. But that just doesn't happen, unfortunately. And so I keep running, I keep rotating. I'm trying to find an opportunity to get back into the fight. And I just end up chilling, because keep in mind, even though that you see that there's bullets flying and stuff happening, you'll notice that in the upper right, no squad is actually getting eliminated. So I have to just keep waiting patiently for the best opportunity. And unfortunately, it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't come. And so only thing I can really do is continue to play the waiting game. Even if I decide to push a team, everyone is kind of just waiting for the first team to fight. And when it finally happens here, I decide to get involved and say I want a piece of the action, because pretty much what everyone in the lobby is doing. So because that happened, I decided to push forward, and they eliminated that really, really quickly. So because that happened so fast, I have to try to see if I can take an off angle and engage, or try to assess where the other team is located. And because I don't know where the other team is located, I continue to wrap and wait for the team to make a mistake. But because they don't make a mistake, they still manage to single me out here, unfortunately. So I'm waiting. And then finally what ends up happening is a team, instead of going over to the right, decides to wrap over on the left over to me. And that really is my downfall in this fight. Because I try my best to win this fight, but then I get shot at by another team. By the same team, excuse me, but you see where the other team is located here? I literally am like the sandwich in between everyone here. And I do as much damage as humanly possible, but I'm literally 1v6, pretty much, because I'm also getting shot from across the way. Fighting the team also down below. I'm trying to make my hitbox as small as possible, but I also have the ring pushing me in. So there's very little that I can do. I need for them to fight. I need for them to be my best friend, but they don't want to be my best friend. They want to just get me out of the lobby, and it causes me, as you see there, the crossfire. I think there was probably like, what? Let's freeze frame on that. I'm being shot by everyone in the lobby because I'm dishing a lot of damage. If anything, I should have probably played this a little more passive and wait for them to make a mistake. If you look at the crossfire, I was shot by pretty much everywhere. It's like that meme was like, you're probably wondering how I got here. And well, we know how I got here, because the teams are rotating, and then I just got stuck in the middle because they were playing more defensively. Even if I decided to shove one of them, I still would have gotten picked on. So I needed to probably do less damage, instead of making me being the target focus of everything. So these last 3 clips are going to be a lot shorter. So what you'll notice, I constantly always drop near the action towards the start of a round. This is done very intentionally, but there's always going to be a spot that's available for you as a solo queue to find some spots. So if I notice they're all landing over on the left, which they are, I'm going to make sure I loot here to grab my loot so I can be engaged. Because the thing is that most teams are very unaware of the amount of, you lose count of the amount of people within a squad. And you don't know if it's a full squad or not, so people play respectfully if you're solo queuing, and they tend to respect you. And this happened a lot, where I didn't get eliminated off drop, where I got a full squad wipe, but then I got punished later because of a poor rotation in, or I just got singled out. So once I got my loot, I'm pretty quick in the building. I got what I needed, and I find a wingman, and I push in. So right now I took as many shots as I possibly could, and I decided to try to find an angle and go for as many eliminations as possible. And you'll notice again, the gun that I prioritize the most, especially when I solo queue, is the wingman. It does amazing burst damage, and I have my cleanup weapon being some sort of SMG or AR, just as like a side weapon. But burst damage is really king, so anything when it comes to a bow check or anything of that nature is going to be huge. So right now, I know I have a 1v1. I can tell this is the Valkyrie from earlier, or the one that's part of the squad. But the thing I don't know is that there's other teams nearby. I am making a lot of noise, so I also have to be pretty smart, but I also want to clean this up as quick as possible. I land a pretty good amount of shots, but I also whiff quite a bit, so I decided to reset just to make sure I don't get pushed afterwards. Because yes, we're above flush, but even if I get pushed afterwards, then I'm not going to win the encounter. So this Valkyrie is flying around, but I also hear footsteps from a neighboring team. So I know that I need to clean this up relatively quick. And so the Valkyrie actually decides to push me instead, which is very, very interesting. I decided to go up. This almost could have been a hard throw on my part, but I got very lucky that she whiffed, and then I did a nice little 180 bouncing around and managed to clutch out, and I will leave. I'm pretty much leaving because I know that I can't win this fight because it's a 1v3 and I have less than 75 HP, and I know that I can't win that. I at least need to reset for a second, and what ends up happening is that team that's shooting at me actually does get third-partied. So while they're shooting at me, there is another team that shows up right behind them, so you always have to assume that there's another team. Always assume there's another squad. And don't have that be playing to the point where you're afraid to take fights, but play to the point where you know that you need to be fast enough to clean up. Ask yourself, can I clean this fast enough? If the answer is no, well then the first thing you're going to see is just back out. This team is very, very aggressive. And this actually turns out to be the Wraith Master squad that had like 26,000 eliminations or something of that effect. So like I said, if sometimes with teams you might face a really sweaty squad and they seem to be landing their shots, the only thing you can do is just keep moving and keep rotating. Because there's still 13 squads, and yeah, I tried to catch one out. If I did more damage, I would have stayed. And because my damage, I'm going to be blunt, I was missing my shots, I was sucking, so because in that moment it wasn't very solid, I'm just going to keep running until I find a better opportunity. A better opportunity does come because they do get thirded here, but I kind of pushed a little too far ahead and I hesitated. Because I hesitated, it's probably around between 5 to 7 seconds of hesitation if I should go in on this. I could have been here 5 to 7 seconds sooner, and because of that, I feel like I missed my opportunity to have a cleaner third. So I tried to come in third on this fight, but I realized they cleaned up, and I realized now that they're going to have way better armors. So I decided to rat, and this is a big mistake. Honestly, I whiffed an extra shot here. That would have been really nice. So the Lobe was going to run up here on the right, and I can't decide if she's going to look at me on the left. So I decided to risk it and go for the wingman shots, and I whiffed 2 shots there, and because of that, I wide swing up to the front, and I take way too much damage. That wide swing pretty much costed me, and there's no way I'm going to fight this. Honestly, I should have just turned around and fought, and there goes the elimination. And there's a 27,000 kills. Very sweaty players, sweaty gamers. It is what it is. Let's highlight what happens if you land near a team, and it's only one squad, and you know that you can confidently take the fight. So I knew there was only one squad here, and I got the notification saying enemy squad landed nearby, but I'm looking around to make sure I wasn't actually fully contested, which is a plus side. I wasn't actually fully contested, so I get to loot up all this area here. This enemy team doesn't know that I'm by myself, which is the information that you want to constantly present to them. So I'm just looking for an opening, and luckily the Valkyrie is running over to the open, and I managed to do quite a bit of damage to her. And because quite a bit of damage was done, it means that I need to consistently put pressure. So the pressure I keep, notice how I keep my hitbox pretty small here, making it harder for this Pathfinder to hit me, which throws the elimination here. I decide to top off to make sure that I'm topping off, but I also see that they're going for the potential resin side, which means I have a clean 1v1 on my hands here. So I decide to queue up, and I go for the elimination. And I knew without a shadow of a doubt that the person was running in going for the res. And because of that, by the time they went in, I see them resing here. And now I have myself now, again, a clean 1v1. So this is how you isolate opponents. When you lay down the damage, you lay down the pressure. Stay with that pressure. Don't give up on the pressure. Open the door whenever she's sliding in to do some damage. She's got a pretty good shot. Not too bad. So I wait for her to make the mistake to wide swing me here, and because she threw the arc, I know she's transitioning to a different weapon. That's when I make my play. Because it takes a second for you to switch back to your gun after you throw an arc, and you see when I catch her out, she throws the arc, but she's still switching, and she doesn't have her gun out in time, and so that causes me to get the elimination. So I'll skip to whenever I finally get eliminated. It was whenever I decided to push outside a zone here, and it was just kind of a mistake. I probably shouldn't have gotten so greedy on this third party. And you see there's a team of 3, and then the team that was fighting the Gibraltar happened to be the last of his squad, and he decided to run. But now I just become the sandwich, unfortunately, in this scenario, where I probably should have just kept ducking left instead of going right here. And that was my big mistake. I should have just held into zone. I shouldn't have gotten so excited. It's because nothing was happening, and I wanted to make it more of an interesting round, and I accidentally messed up my Q there, and it just cost me. Despite how much movement I have, I get shot from behind me. My whole kill feed is with all 4 of them shooting at me, and that just is the round there. Now, this is going to be the last clip, and I'll probably title these a bit more appropriately compared to the other solo queue guides of like what happens if a team just wants to just nonstop push you. Like we have all 3 of them flying on me, and I'm not dishing out any damage because I see they're kind of landing a bit isolated. I look for the opportunity to duck and weave and cut through. So my opportunity to duck and weave and cut through was going to be that opportunity, and I decided to cut through the building, and I look for an armor, not one there. I grab the white armor because it's better to have armor running away than not, so they still at least will stop pushing, but they keep pushing very, very aggressively. So when do you actually turn and shoot? So I see a team is located in front of me, so I know that shooting out in the open field is not going to be ideal. So I decide to wait, and I continue to keep forging ahead until I can find an opportunity to turn around. And they don't necessarily afford me that opportunity. They kind of force it upon me. And once you notice that one is overextended, you wait for somebody to overextend. That's the answer. This person overextended, it means my running is done. They made the mistake, they pushed onto me, and I'm going to get this elimination, and that's perfect timing for me. I'm very happy about that. So now I know I have a 1v2 scenario. And I try to land as much damage here, and I don't back down from the encounter. My hitbox can definitely be smaller. I almost hard through there, but unfortunately I didn't want to have my back turned to the Valkyrie, and I'm hoping I would land my shots to scare her away. And I whiff pretty hard here. But it's okay if you whiff as long as you keep going back and not necessarily running away. You don't have your back turned, but you wait for an opportunity to make a play. So these constant shots, even though you're missing, at least you're trying to look for an opening, because the opening could have been much better. And I finally get the cleanup here on the Valkyrie. So what I do is I go for the armor swap immediately because I know I'm going to need it, because I saw what armor type that she had. It makes it sound like she's a Pokemon. But I know that she had a purple, so I'm going to use that and use all this medkit time because I know I can get the medkit before this Wraith catches up. So I'm jumping because I'm trying to get her to waste her bullets and time on me. And she has a devotion, which is crazy. Honestly, she should have won this encounter, won this fight. And I think actually she did. I thought I actually won this fight. But that's how you isolate. Honestly, not the best gameplay still, to be honest. I see how many kills. They're competent. They had quite a bit there. That's not awful. Let's go back and click into it. I thought I was going to win it. I think this is a great one to end on. Is like it doesn't always work out in your favor. And I thought this one did. I couldn't remember the clip. I titled it 1v3, but my memory just failed, so it's perfectly fine. But if I landed one extra shot, that shot right there would have been the difference. And honestly, if I cleaned up the Valkyrie a few seconds earlier, would have been much better. I went for the right plays. I just was whiffing, and you know, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. There you go. All of a sudden, you land every single shot. And it's just, you know, as long as you make a play and you make an effort, that's all that matters. So I know this is a really long video, and I apologize, but I really want it to be as informative and helpful as possible for all of you guys. And so to wrap up the last tip, if you're playing Horizon, go in the test range and practice when you fly up in your queue, so you don't miss shots that you saw there. Is that even though I've practiced quite a bit of it, you're just going to whiff. There's going to be some scenarios where it just doesn't work out in your favor. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you guys found this video helpful, educational, and try to provide as many tips as humanly possible. And I'll see you guys all in the next video.